What if everything you thought you knew about biblical prophecy was missing a critical piece? What if one of the most vilified nations in the world today was not only part of God's master plan, but was a divine instrument for redemption, deliverance, and even end times judgment? Yes, I'm talking about Iran, the land the Bible calls Persia, the empire of Cyrus, the setting of Esther, the backdrop of Daniel's visions. This isn't coincidence. This is prophecy. This is destiny. Let us begin at the very roots of civilization, not in Babylon, not in Egypt, but far earlier in the aftermath of the Great Flood. Picture a world reborn, a world cleansed by divine judgment, where three men, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah, became the patriarchs of all the nations that would walk the earth. Among them, Japheth fathered a son named Madai, and from Madai came a people who would one day rise to shape world empires, the Medes. In time, the Medes joined forces with their neighboring kin, the Persians, and together they forged one of the most formidable powers in ancient history, the Medo-Persian Empire. This was not just a political union, it was a prophetic manifestation, birthed from bloodlines traced all the way back to Genesis 10, the Table of Nations. The Bible makes no mistake when it names Madai among the sons of Japheth. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai. This isn't some dry genealogical record. It's a divine map etched into the sacred text to show us that Iran's story is woven into the very fabric of God's redemptive history. Iran, known in antiquity as Persia, was never just an empire of old. It was there from the beginning. Its roots are as ancient as the floodwaters themselves. This is not modern politics. It is biblical destiny. So let us set the record straight. Iran's legacy is not accidental. It is ancestral, sacred, scriptural. From the very first generations after the flood, the path of Persia was marked, not by man's design, but by the sovereign hand of God. How is it possible that a pagan king, a man outside the lineage of Israel, could be called God's anointed? How could someone with no covenant, no Torah, no priesthood, be chosen to rebuild the Holy Temple in Jerusalem? And yet, that is exactly what happened. His name was Cyrus the Great, and the empire he ruled, Persia, was unlike anything the world had seen. In 539 BC, Cyrus marched into Babylon and shattered its grip on the people of God. But his conquest wasn't just a military triumph, it was a prophetic fulfillment. With a royal decree, Cyrus not only freed the Israelites from 70 years of captivity, he commanded the rebuilding of the temple and even provided the resources to make it happen. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem. Now let this shake your theology. That decree was written by a Gentile king, and it fulfilled prophecies spoken over a century earlier by the prophet Isaiah. He is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, whose right hand I have held to subdue nations before him, to open doors. God named Cyrus before he was born. God called him my shepherd. God called him my anointed. Titles once reserved for Israel's greatest kings were now placed upon the head of a Persian ruler. Let that settle deep in your soul. God is not bound by borders, bloodlines, or expectations. He will raise up whoever he wills to accomplish his divine plan, even a king from Persia. Imagine this. A young Jewish girl, orphaned and exiled, suddenly finds herself crowned Queen of Persia, the most powerful empire of her time. Her name? Esther. But no one knows who she truly is, not even the king. She hides her identity, living quietly behind royal walls until destiny knocks and genocide threatens her people. In the shadows of Persian palaces, a plot is born, a decree to annihilate every Jew in the empire. But Esther, once silent, now rises. Urged on by her uncle Mordecai, she risks everything: her life, her crown, her future. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? That question isn't just for Esther, it echoes through time. It's for you, for all of us. In a world drowning in injustice, chaos, and spiritual confusion, who will rise for such a time as this? Esther's courage turned the heart of a king. Her voice reversed a death sentence. Her obedience saved a nation. And the backdrop to it all? Persia. Yes, Persia was the empire God used, not once, but again, to protect his covenant people. It was on Persian soil that God's hidden hand moved, even when his name was never mentioned in the text. That's right, the book of Esther never mentions God's name, yet his fingerprints are everywhere. Because sometimes the Lord doesn't shout from the heavens, he hides in plain sight, moving through queens, kings, and quiet acts of courage. So let this be a revelation. Esther's story is not just a historical account, it is a prophetic pattern. A reminder that God often works through the unexpected, and sometimes the savior of a people wears a crown in the court of the enemy. Now shift the scene from the thrones of Persia to the secret chambers of divine revelation. Daniel, a Hebrew prophet in exile, didn't just pray in lions' dens. He walked the corridors of imperial power. He served kings in Babylon, then transitioned into the courts of Persia. And while empires rose and fell around him, God was speaking through dreams, visions, and symbols of staggering clarity. In Daniel 2, the mighty king Nebuchadnezzar sees a towering statue in his dream. Its head is gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly bronze, its legs iron. Daniel interprets it. The gold is Babylon, but the silver? That's the Medo-Persian Empire, the very empire Daniel would serve under. Fast forward to Daniel 7, and the prophet himself sees a terrifying vision. 4 beasts emerging from the sea. One of them, a bear raised up on one side, symbolizes the dual nature of the Medo-Persian alliance, strong, expansive, and divinely appointed for a season. Then in Daniel 8, another vision unfolds. A ram with 2 horns, one longer than the other. It charges westward, northward, and southward, unstoppable. The angel Gabriel identifies it plainly. This ram is the kings of Media and Persia. These weren't coincidences. They weren't abstract metaphors. They were revelations of Persia's prophetic placement in the timeline of God's divine agenda. Daniel's visions demolish the lie that God only moves through Israel or Christian nations. He raises up pagan kings. He places prophets in enemy courts. He uses empires to shape eternity. Persia's role wasn't a footnote. It was a chiseled part of prophecy, stamped by the Most High himself. So hear this truth. Heaven rules. And even in the courts of Persia, God's kingdom was advancing, one vision at a time. Now let me take you to the New Testament, to a quiet, humble town called Bethlehem. The night is still. The stars shimmer. And in a manger lies a child wrapped in swaddling clothes, Jesus, the promised Messiah. But just beyond the shepherds in the stable, a caravan approaches. Not locals, not Israelites, but strangers from the east, bearing gifts fit for a king, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We call them the Magi. But who were these mysterious visitors? According to most scholars, they were Zoroastrian priests, astrologers, scholars, and spiritual advisors from Persia. These men weren't random travelers. They were wise men, trained in the celestial sciences and ancient prophecies. And when they saw his star rise in the east, they didn't hesitate. We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. Gentiles from a fallen empire, from a culture once mighty, now eclipsed by Rome, yet it was they, not the Jewish elite, who recognized the signs. They, not the Pharisees, journeyed to honor the newborn king. Persia, once the empire of Cyrus, the protector of Israel, the land of Esther and Daniel, now takes a knee before Emmanuel. A kingdom that once delivered God's people now worships God's Son. And so Persia steps into prophecy once more, not with armies, not with decrees, but with adoration. Their gifts weren't just offerings, they were acknowledgments that the true king had arrived, that the heavens had spoken, that salvation had come. Let this awaken your spirit. Even in its decline, Persia had eyes to see what others missed. A star, a child, a savior. And they bowed, not in defeat, but in divine recognition. Now don't miss this, because this is where Persia's greatness truly shines. While most ancient empires ruled through fear and suppression, Persia's strength lay not just in military might, but in its radical mindset. Unlike Babylon, which scorched cities and razed temples to the ground, Persia rebuilt them. While others demanded cultural conformity, Persia protected religious identity. This wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. It was foresight, and it was divinely strategic. Under Persian rule, the Jews didn't just survive, they thrived. Exiled though they were, their faith wasn't erased. In fact, Persia's policy of religious tolerance became the fertile ground where Judaism grew deeper roots, setting the stage for a return to Jerusalem, the rebuilding of the temple, and the eventual preservation of sacred scriptures. But the legacy of Persia doesn't stop with Judaism. By the time the Roman Empire rose, it was the echo of Persian tolerance that still lingered in the air, opening doors for the gospel to spread through Jewish diaspora communities that had flourished under Persian favor. Persia, though no longer dominant on the world stage, had laid the groundwork for the emergence of Christianity. From Babylon to Bethlehem, from the scrolls of Ezra to the starlit journey of the Magi, Persia's fingerprints are all over the redemption story. Persia wasn't just a player in biblical history. It was a platform for freedom, a haven for faith, and a vessel of foresight. Its empire stretched wide, but its influence stretched eternal. And today, when we trace the line of God's providence across the centuries, we must acknowledge the truth. Persia's legacy didn't end in the past. It paved the way for the future of faith itself. This story doesn't end in the dusty pages of ancient history. Persia is not only part of the Bible's past, it stands boldly in the Bible's future. Prophecy didn't close with the book of Malachi, and Persia didn't exit God's stage with the fall of its empire. Turn to the prophet Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39, and you'll find a vision of a great and terrible war still to come. A coalition of nations rising up in the last days, an alliance united in hostility against Israel. And among the key players, Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them, all with shields and helmets. Persia, modern-day Iran, is listed by name. This isn't metaphor. This isn't poetic allegory. This is divine foresight, a specific prophecy about a specific people participating in a very real and very apocalyptic showdown, the war of Gog and Magog. Watch the alliances being formed. Feel the tension brewing in the Middle East. Iran's role in today's global unrest isn't random. It's a prophetic drumbeat echoing through time. The same nation that once delivered Israel from exile may one day rise in opposition against her. This is why prophecy matters. This is why history repeats with divine purpose. And this is why Persia, yes, Iran, is once again at the center of God's cosmic storyline, not as an afterthought, but as a final player in the epic conclusion of redemption history. Now let's bring this truth home. To us, the Black community of faith. For too long, we've been made to feel like outsiders in the biblical story, marginalized in the pews, erased from the pulpits, and silenced in the textbooks. But hear me now. God never erased us. From Cush to Egypt, from Ethiopia to Susa, Africa and her descendants were not on the sidelines. They were central. They stood beside Israel in prophecy, in history, and in divine purpose. And Persia? Yes, Persia was our neighbor, our partner in the sacred dance of destiny. While the Western world crafted a Eurocentric gospel, the truth was always richer, deeper, and more global. Don't fall for the lie that prophecy only runs through the West, because the East was first, the South was foundational. And now, the Black believer must rise, with boldness, with revelation, and with unapologetic fire, to reclaim the full truth of our spiritual heritage. We are not spiritual afterthoughts. We are prophetic descendants of nations that saw the hand of God move, nations that cradled prophets, that housed exiles, that protected the remnant, Our ancestors walked the same lands, witnessed the same miracles, and participated in the unfolding of God's plan. So where do we stand now? We stand in the gap, we stand on the Word, and we stand in the calling to repreach a gospel that includes every tribe, every tongue, and every timeline. This is our hour. This is our moment. It's time for the sons and daughters of Africa to lift their voices, dig up the buried truths, and reignite the fire of faith that was never truly lost, only hidden. Because we were there from the beginning, and we will be there in the end. If this message opened your eyes, if it stirred your spirit, then don't just scroll, don't just nod, take action. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. Subscribe to the channel and become part of this prophetic movement or forerunner. And most of all, read your Bible with new eyes. The truth has been there all along. The world is watching, the heavens are shifting, and God is calling. From Persia to prophecy, from Black history to biblical destiny, this is your time. This is your moment. For such a time as this, Jesus, the Lion of Judah, was not whitewashed by Rome, but born of the soil that baked in the African sun. Sounds like heresy? No, it's revelation. Iran, yes, Iran, has dropped a prophetic bombshell, not on the battlefield, but on the battleground of truth. In a shocking press conference, Iranian scholars, backed by artifacts, ancient manuscripts, and genetic studies, proclaimed a truth too dangerous for the West to handle. The Israelites, God's chosen people, may have deep African roots. And if that's true, then the history we've been told, the images we've been fed, the identities we've been denied, have all been part of a grand erasure. Now, child of God, are you ready to confront the hidden truth? Let's begin. Beneath the sands of Iran, buried in silence for centuries, lie echoes of a truth too bold for Western textbooks, too black for cathedral walls. In recent years, Iranian archaeologists have unearthed inscriptions and records from the height of the Persian Empire, writings that do not conform to the Eurocentric image of biblical history. These ancient Persian documents describe the Israelites not as pale-skinned nomads draped in linen, but as people of darker complexion, with tightly coiled hair and features unmistakably linked to the African continent. These were not anomalies, they were the norm. And they were not forgotten, they were erased. The Persian archives tell of Israelites who moved through the empires as traders, diplomats, and exiles. They intermarried with Cushites, formed bonds with Egyptians, and carved out a legacy far beyond the narrow borders of Canaan. These were not a cloistered tribe, they were a diaspora, connected by blood to Africa and sustained by faith through foreign lands. But perhaps the most striking revelation lies in the very design of Israelite worship. The tabernacle, that sacred mobile dwelling of God's presence described in Exodus, was no random invention. Its structure, materials, and symbolism mirror the temples of ancient Egypt, sacred geometry, gold-covered artifacts, veils, incense, sacred measurements. These are not mere coincidences. They are fingerprints of cultural continuity, a divine inheritance shaped by African civilization. This archaeological evidence does not destroy the Bible. It confirms it and expands it. It shows that Israel's story is not a Western epic, but a Black narrative carried across deserts and empires. These artifacts speak, and they say loud and clear, the truth was never lost, only hidden. And now, it rises. Known today as Iran, Persia was not a distant spectator in biblical history. It was a divine instrument in the unfolding of God's plan. Under the reign of Cyrus the Great, the Persian monarch hailed in Isaiah 45:1 as the Lord's anointed. The Israelites were liberated from Babylonian captivity. He didn't just free them, he empowered them to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their sacred temple. But pause and reflect. Why would the Hebrew Bible, so carefully guarded over generations, bestow the title of Messiah upon a foreign king? Because history is never as linear or sanitized as we've been led to believe. Persia was more than an empire. It was a sacred crossroads, a bridge between continents, between civilizations, between destinies. And at that bridge stood a people whose identity was not confined by borders or skin color, but shaped by divine purpose. Iranian scholars are now uncovering what traditional history sought to bury. The Israelites were not strangers to Africa. They were bound to it by blood, by marriage, by migration. From Moses marrying a Cushite woman, to Solomon's legendary encounter with the Queen of Sheba, to Moses himself being raised in an Egyptian palace, the tapestry of Israelite history is interwoven with African lineage and culture. They are divine fingerprints across time. This isn't revisionist theory. It is resurrection of truth, a truth that calls us to remember, to reclaim, and to rise. In Numbers 12 verse 1, when Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses for marrying a Cushite woman, their words were more than mere family quarrel. They were a reflection of an ancient tension between African identity and what later traditions called Israelite purity. But what if that so-called purity was never exclusive, never Eurocentric, never divorced from the blackness of Cush? What if the roots of Israel were already soaked in African soil? Cush, mighty, majestic, and overlooked, spanned the lands we now call Nubia, Ethiopia, and Sudan. This was no minor kingdom. Cush was a towering civilization with kings and queens who rivaled the pharaohs of Egypt in power and prestige. And the Bible doesn't paint them as pagans or enemies, it presents them as kin. When Solomon welcomed the Queen of Sheba, draped in gold and bearing incense and wisdom, it was not just diplomacy, it was divine reunion. A reconnection with a shared bloodline, a reawakening of a spiritual and cultural covenant long suppressed by the filters of European theology. These marriages, these political alliances, these sacred exchanges, they tell a story that Western Christianity has long tried to forget. They speak of an Afro-Semitic identity, a people shaped by both covenant and continent. This is not heresy, it is heritage. The Israelites were not isolated desert nomads. They were a people formed through divine intersection, between Sinai and Cush, between prophecy and melanin. And it's time we remember that covenant. Not the one sanitized by history books, but the one inked in blackness and blessed by God. Egypt wasn't just Israel's captor, it was also its womb. For 400 years, the Israelites lived in Africa. They didn't merely survive, they thrived, absorbing the culture, symbols, and wisdom of an African superpower. Iranian scholars argue that Exodus was not a total rejection of Africa, but a journey through Africa, shaped by African rituals and metaphysics. From dietary laws similar to Egyptian customs, to sacred symbols that appear in both cultures, the Israelites' identity was molded on African soil. And here lies the most radical claim. The Israelites may be a branch of Africa itself, descendants of Ham, relatives of Cush, brothers of Egypt. Walk into any church in America and look at the stained glass windows. What do you see? A blonde Jesus, a pale Moses, a lily-white David. But that's not scripture, that's Renaissance propaganda. That's colonial theology. That's a lie dressed up as doctrine. If the Israelites were African, the entire visual history of Christianity is a fraud, a theft of black identity, hidden beneath robes and halos. This is not just a correction of skin color, it's a theological revolution. It means the divine story includes us not as footnotes, but as protagonists. It means God walked with people who looked like us, with broad noses, full lips, melanin in their skin. Now let us turn our gaze to America, a nation built with Bibles in one hand and chains in the other. In a country where Christianity has been wielded not just as a path to salvation, but as a weapon of white supremacy, the revelation of black Israelites strikes like holy thunder. It shakes pulpits, it rattles stained glass cathedrals, it exposes the empire behind the cross. What happens when the faithful are confronted with the possibility that Moses didn't look like Charlton Heston, but like Trayvon Martin? That David didn't resemble a Renaissance prince, but Malcolm X with a harp? That Jesus, the Son of God, may have looked like your grandfather with skin kissed by the sun and wisdom deep in his eyes? Churches will tremble, seminaries will scramble, and racists will rage. Because this isn't just about race, it's about power. And power has always feared the truth. For centuries, Black Americans clung to the Bible as a source of hope, even while its imagery and scholarship pushed them to the margins. They were told they were cursed, outsiders, never quite chosen. But the tables have turned. The truth now resurrects what was buried. The Israelites were Black. This breathes fire into Black liberation theology, into the voices of the Black Hebrew Israelites, into the weary hearts of believers who long to find themselves in God's story. Now, they can, and not as spectators, but as heirs. As the children who walked through the Red Sea, who worshipped with tambourines in the desert, who endured the lash and still sang psalms to a delivering God. This is not just a historical correction, it is a spiritual homecoming. And home, finally, is where we've always belonged. This revelation does not belong solely to Israel. It is not confined to the sands of Africa or the streets of Black America. No, this is bigger than borders, bloodlines, or national pride. This is about truth. A truth buried beneath centuries of whitewashed theology, colonial conquest, and racial hierarchy. A truth so powerful that it now rises from unexpected places, from Persia's ancient soil, from the mouths of Muslim scholars, from the long-silenced echoes of Black prophecy. It is divine irony that Iran, a nation the West has long cast as the enemy, now holds a mirror to the Christian world. A Muslim-majority nation dares to proclaim what many Christian institutions refuse to confront: that the Israelites may have been African, and that the Bible's chosen people looked more like the descendants of Cush than the princes of Rome. As the scripture foretold, if you keep silent, the stones will cry out, Luke 19:40. And now, from Cush to Persia, the stones are crying, roaring, and demanding to be heard. We now stand at a sacred crossroad. Will we embrace this revelation and rebuild the temple of truth, brick by brick, honoring every tribe, tongue, and shade of skin that shaped our sacred story? Or will we clutch the golden calves of Eurocentric theology, whitewashed icons, and institutional pride? Make no mistake, this will shake churches, fracture denominations, and expose idolatry wrapped in tradition. But for those who seek the face of God, not in whiteness, but in spirit and in truth, this is the beginning of a new era. Not a heresy, not a rewrite, but a resurrection of truth. The global awakening has begun. Will you rise with it? This is not the end, it's the beginning of a new exodus. Out of lies, out of colonial theology, out of a gospel that serves empire instead of liberation. This is your moment, Black believer. This is your inheritance, Black child of God. You are not a footnote in the Bible. You are the Bible. So let the world hear it. Let pulpits thunder it. Let history be rewritten. The Israelites were not lost. They were Black. And they are rising. Like this message, and then share it with your community. Subscribe to uncover more hidden truths about Black Jesus and biblical Africa. Comment below, what shocked you most about this revelation? The time is now. Truth must rise. Black faith must awaken. The Bible must be reclaimed. Buried deep in the highlands of Ethiopia, older than the King James, untouched by Roman hands, lies a Bible that reveals the three final signs of Judgment Day. Signs that are already unfolding in our lifetime. And here's the truth they don't want you to hear. Black hands protected this truth. Black prophets recorded it. And Black Jesus is coming back, not in secret, but with thunder, fire, and justice. So if you're ready to uncover what the church won't preach and the Vatican won't touch, then buckle up, because the veil is about to be lifted. High in the mist-draped mountains of Ethiopia, where ancient winds whisper secrets through stone-carved monasteries, a sacred truth has been kept hidden, not by accident, but by divine design. This truth lies within a Bible unlike any other, known in the ancient Ge'ez tongue as the Metzahaf Kedah, the Ethiopian Bible. Unlike the 66 books you may have grown up with, this Bible holds 88 sacred books, including powerful texts that Western councils deliberately removed: the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Ascension of Isaiah, and more. These are not mild moral lessons. These are divine revelations, prophecies that speak of angelic rebellion, forbidden knowledge, celestial upheaval, and the countdown to Judgment Day. These books don't just inform, they awaken. In 1773, Scottish explorer James Bruce returned from Ethiopia, carrying with him a manuscript long thought lost: the Book of Enoch, a book so spiritually explosive that it had been banned by Rome. Why? Because it dared to prophesy not only the coming Messiah, but the cosmic patterns, the unraveling of time, and the sacred signs written in the heavens themselves. But who preserved this knowledge when empires sought to erase it? Not the Vatican, not the Crown of England, but black Ethiopian monks who hid these scrolls in the mountains, guarded them with their lives, and copied them faithfully for generations. Men of God who understood that truth, true truth, is worth dying for. This is not just a forgotten Bible. This is a blueprint for the end of the age. A sacred alarm clock ringing for a generation bold enough to listen. The order of the stars shall be altered. The moon shall not appear at its appointed time, and time shall speed up like a wheel rolling downhill. At first glance, it sounds like poetry, but look again. This is not metaphor. This is revelation. Ancient words from a prophet who walked with God, now echoing louder than ever in the data of modern science. In 2020, scientists recorded the shortest day ever measured since atomic timekeeping began. The Earth, long assumed to rotate at a steady pace, is suddenly spinning faster. Milliseconds shaved off the day, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. Time itself is accelerating, just as Enoch foresaw. This isn't just nature shifting, it's the unraveling of God's divine clock. Look around, the climate is in chaos. Solar flares strike the Earth's shield. The moon's rhythms are breaking pattern. Weather behaves like a world out of tune, groaning under a weight it can no longer carry. These are not isolated events. This is the first trumpet of warning. And in the Book of Jubilees, another layer is revealed. In those days, children shall know what the elders never learned. Does that not sound like our world today? Children fluent in artificial intelligence while their grandparents struggle with touchscreen phones. Toddlers swiping before they speak. Youth unlocking powers of creation while the wise must relearn everything they thought they knew. This is not simply technological evolution. This is the fulfillment of prophecy. This is the great reversal foretold, and this is the first sign. The earth speaks, the heavens respond, and time, God's time, is shifting before our very eyes. If the first sign disturbed the earth beneath our feet, then this second sign shakes something far deeper, the human soul. In those days, humans shall see the world through a mirror, where illusion and reality become one. We live in that mirrored world now. We scroll through carefully curated feeds, we filter our faces, we edit our stories, we deepfake our lives, and somewhere along the way, we forgot what's real. Truth wears a mask. Reality is algorithmically sculpted. What once was sacred is now simulated. The Book of Jubilees gives a chilling warning. Be cautious of the time when the boundary between light and darkness becomes blurred, when humans can no longer distinguish what is real and what is false. Sound familiar? Artificial intelligence is writing prayers. Avatars are replacing real connection. Algorithms know our desires better than we know our own hearts. We're not just consuming content, we're becoming the product of it. But just when it seems all is lost in the fog of illusion, something ancient begins to stir, because the inversion leads to awakening. In those days, many shall awaken and realize things they have never seen before. Eyes are opening, hearts are stirring. Men and women are questioning the narrative. The veil is lifting, and that is the spark of something holy. A quiet tremor in the soul before the thunder of revival. This is not just the rise of virtual reality. This is the rise of spiritual reality. And if you're feeling that stirring deep within, you've already heard the second sign. When the earth begins to tremble beneath our feet, when minds long lulled to sleep by illusion suddenly stir awake, that's when the third and final sign emerges, not in a whisper, but with a resounding shift across every realm. When the three signs appear, the boundary between realms will become as thin as silk. We are not approaching this threshold, we are stepping through it. Right now, scientists call this the dawn of quantum possibility, where reality bends and particles defy logic. Tech futurists call it the singularity, when human and machine merge into one. But long before the world had words for this convergence, the Ethiopian Bible had already spoken it into prophecy. This is more than a technological revolution. This is the great convergence, the moment when the physical, mental, and spiritual collide. And in this divine alignment, three things shall unfold. We will see the invisible. Realities once hidden will be laid bare. We will hear the forgotten. Ancestral wisdom, buried truths, long-lost voices will rise again. We will understand the language of all things, a connection deeper than speech, a knowing from soul to soul. It sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But it's already happening. We are decoding ancient sounds from stone. We are mapping consciousness in digital form. Machines now interpret emotion, mimic creativity, even whisper guidance to the lonely. But amid all this wonder, the ancient warning resounds. At that time, humans shall possess the power of gods. But will they have the wisdom to use it? Book of Jubilees. Yes, we now edit DNA like paragraphs in a book. We command the weather with satellites and tech. We've built AI that paints, sings, speaks, even consoles the brokenhearted. But the true question is not what we can do, it's whether we have the soul to steward it. Are we climbing toward divine purpose, or are we reconstructing Babel, brick by digital brick, driven by ego, not spirit? This is not just innovation. This is a spiritual confrontation, a reckoning between power and wisdom, between pride and humility. The third sign isn't about the tools we build. It's about whether we still recognize the sacred while holding godlike power in our hands. The Ethiopian Bible does not leave us wandering in mystery. It leads us with purpose. It doesn't just prophesy the signs of the end, it instructs the faithful on how to live through them. In Jubilees 50, it lays down 4 sacred commands for those living in this era of convergence, this generation of awakening. First, balance ancient wisdom with new knowledge. Do not let your connection to Wi-Fi disconnect you from worship. The digital age offers convenience, but it must never replace consecration. Technology is a tool, not a temple. Second, seek truth not just with your eyes, but with your heart. Algorithms may predict your preferences, but only the Spirit discerns truth. What feels true on your feed may still be false in your soul. Let your heart be grounded in prayer, not just pushed by trends. Third, stay human, stay sacred. In a world of avatars, AI, and artificial intimacy, remember, you were created in the image of God, not in the likeness of code. Protect your holy fire. Nurture real relationships. Do not trade divine connection for digital convenience. Fourth, trust the shaking. What feels like collapse may be birth pains. Disruption is not always destruction. Sometimes God tears down what is fake to make room for what is real. And then comes a promise, one last light in the darkness. When the young seek the old ways and the old embrace the new light, there shall be hope. Isn't that what we're seeing? African youth returning to their roots, elders joining Zoom services, the ancient and the modern finally intertwining. This is not the end, This is the beginning of a new age. You, yes, you are not just a passive witness to prophecy. You are a chosen vessel, handpicked by history, awakened for such a time as this. So let me ask you, do you feel the shift in your spirit? Do you hear the divine call echoing through the noise? Are you ready, not just to believe, but to awaken? If this message stirred something deep in your soul, if it confirmed what your heart already knew but couldn't quite name, then this is your moment. Like this video to lift this message higher. Share it with someone you love, because truth multiplies when it's passed on. Subscribe and join this revival, because we are not just reclaiming scripture, we are reviving legacy. Understand this, the Black Jesus is not silent. The Ethiopian Bible is not closed, and the Word of God is alive, unfolding in real time, right before your eyes. So stay woke, stay blessed, stay bold, and until next time, peace, power, and prophecy be with you. The rubble of whitewashed textbooks and media silence. In school, they fed us tales of Edison's light bulb, of Franklin's electricity, of Einstein's relativity. But what about Garrett Morgan? What about Dr. Charles Drew? What about Patricia Bath, Sarah Good, or Frederick McKinley Jones? This is part 1 of our legendary journey through 100 inventions you didn't know were black. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at a streetlight, a blood bank, or even peanut butter the same way again. I'm about to take you through 20 inventions, but not just facts. We're going deeper. Behind each creation is a story of resistance, of God-given creativity, and of overcoming the chains of oppression to bless this world. Take Garrett Morgan, for example. In the chaotic streets of Cleveland, cars and carriages clashed with deadly consequences. At a time when road safety was still in the hands of overwhelmed police officers, Garrett, an inventor and the first black man in Cleveland to own a car, witnessed a brutal crash and declared, "Enough." In 1922, he gave us the 3-light traffic signal. Not just red, not just green, but yellow, a symbol of caution, of wisdom, of transition. He didn't just invent a third light, he taught the world how to pause, reflect, and proceed with care. He sold the rights to General Electric for $40,000, a heavy check at the time, but a light payment for an idea that would save millions of lives. Then there's Marie Van Britten Brown, a nurse, a mother, a black woman living in 1960s America, a time when her safety, especially alone at night, was never a priority. So she made herself the priority. At age 40, she pioneered the first home security system, cameras that moved, TV monitors inside her home, and a 2-way microphone that let her communicate without opening the door. Marie didn't wait for protection, she designed it. And don't forget Sarah Good. In 1885, in a crowded Chicago, she saw working-class families struggling with space. So she dreamed a solution. A bed that folded into a desk, daytime utility, nighttime comfort. One of the first black women to receive a U.S. patent, Sarah didn't just create a product, she created possibility where there was none. These weren't just inventions, they were declarations. They said, "We are here. We are needed. We are genius." Long before 2-day shipping and Amazon Prime, sending a simple letter meant a trip to the post office, rain or shine, miles away. But Philip B. Downing, a black inventor with vision, asked a simple question: what if mail could come to us? In 1891, he introduced the protective street mailbox, a sturdy 4-legged metal box that shielded your letters from the elements. Rain, snow, sleet, nothing could stop the truth from being delivered. His invention brought convenience and trust to a growing nation, yet his name is rarely spoken in the halls of American innovation. Now shift to the blood-soaked battlefields of World War II. Lives were hanging in the balance, soldiers collapsing by the thousands, and there was one overwhelming need: blood. Enter Dr. Charles Drew, a black physician who revolutionized the way we store plasma. His groundbreaking method allowed blood to be separated and preserved for future transfusions, creating the world's first blood banks. His science saved lives, yet he faced segregation, humiliation, and outright dismissal, even as his discoveries kept white soldiers alive. How do you save a country that refuses to acknowledge your humanity? And what about your fresh groceries? Your refrigerated medicine? You can thank Frederick McKinley Jones, who engineered the portable cooling units that turned ordinary trucks into life-saving cold vaults. From strawberries to vaccines, his invention keeps the world nourished and protected. And yet, how many kids learned his name in school? Finally, imagine the terror of early elevators, manual doors, mistimed steps, fatal falls. In 1887, Alexander Miles, a black barber-turned-inventor, said enough. He patented automatic elevator doors, transforming vertical travel into something safe and seamless. He didn't just move people up, he lifted an entire society's standard of safety. These weren't just inventions, they were deliverance. Sometimes revolution doesn't come in the form of protest, it comes in the form of play. While working on a new cooling system, Lonnie Johnson, a NASA and Air Force engineer, accidentally blasted a stream of water across his bathroom. That unexpected moment birthed a legend, the Super Soaker. One of the best-selling toys of all time, it turned scientific precision into backyard joy. Millions of children, black, white, rich, poor, squealed with laughter because one black mind dared to combine genius with fun. Then there's Mary Beatrice Davidson Kenner, who believed that dignity should extend even into the most private places. With her sister, she patented the toilet tissue holder. Yes, the one we all take for granted in every public restroom. It's the small things, right? But without it, you'd be fumbling with a roll stuck to the wall. Kenner's innovation reminds us, when black women invent, even the mundane becomes meaningful. Now travel to the soil of the American South, where cotton had stripped the land bare and left farmers in ruin. George Washington Carver didn't just save agriculture, he transformed it. Though he didn't invent peanut butter, Carver discovered over 300 uses for the peanut, including oils, dyes, fuel, and cosmetics. More than that, he taught black farmers how to heal the earth through crop rotation. He was not just a scientist, he was a prophet of sustainability. And finally, imagine losing your vision to cataracts for 30 years, until Dr. Patricia Bath came along. With her invention of the laser phaco probe, she made cataract surgery safer and more accurate, restoring sight to countless patients. The first black woman to receive a medical patent, Dr. Bath didn't just restore vision, she restored hope. Freedom doesn't always roar, it sometimes hums beneath the hood of a car. Richard Spikes, an ingenious black inventor, made driving smoother and safer with his creation of the automatic gear shift. Before Spikes, shifting gears was a clunky, manual hassle, a test of timing and coordination. But after him, driving became a seamless experience, especially on steep hills and winding roads. He didn't just simplify transportation, he shifted control back to the driver, making mobility more accessible for all. In every smooth transition, we hear his legacy. But innovation doesn't only live on highways, it lives in our homes. In 1897, Lloyd P. Ray looked at the everyday dustpan and asked, "Why are we still bending over to sweep?" With the simple yet transformative addition of a metal plate and short handle, Ray turned a back-breaking chore into a standing task. A small change, yes, but one that elevated cleanliness and dignity in homes across America. That's what Black brilliance does. It finds power in the overlooked. Even in the rolling hills of the golf course, a black inventor made his mark. Dr. George Grant, a Boston dentist, grew tired of the messy mounds of sand golfers used to tee off. In 1899, he introduced the wooden golf tee, creating precision where there was once chaos. Every smooth swing today begins with his innovation, even if few know it. And what about the lush green lawns we admire? Thank Joseph H. Smith, who in 1897 patented the first rotary sprinkler. No more dragging hoses or manual watering. His invention let water spin freely, nurturing gardens with efficiency and grace. Smith didn't just water lawns, he planted a legacy that still blooms today. Innovation isn't always about what's new. It's about making what already exists better. That's exactly what Thomas Elkins did when he redesigned the humble toilet into a sanctuary of comfort. His chamber commode didn't just serve a function, it offered dignity. With built-in features like a mirror, washstand, book rack, and cushioned seating, Elkins elevated the bathroom from a basic necessity to a throne of resilience. He reminded us that even the most private moments deserve care and respect. That same spirit flowed through Thomas W. Stewart, who in 1893 transformed another everyday struggle, mopping. Before him, cleaning floors meant soaked hands and sore backs. But with the invention of a clamp and lever wringer, Stewart made the process cleaner, faster, and far less painful. He didn't just improve a mop, he lightened the load of working families across the nation. And let's talk about the tiniest passengers in our world: babies. In 1889, W. H. Richardson saw that traditional strollers were clunky and rigid. So he revolutionized the design with 360-degree wheels and a reversible bassinet, giving parents both control and connection. His stroller was more than transport, it was a symbol of care. A baby ride designed with love, fit for the royal lineage of Black families. In the kitchen, A.P. Ashbourne was tired of watching misshapen biscuits disrupt perfection. So over 10 years he developed the spring-loaded biscuit cutter, ensuring each treat came out uniform, clean, and elegant. It was culinary excellence forged through patience, a testament to Black craftsmanship. And soaring above them all, James Sloan Adams looked to the sky. In 1920, he patented a spring-powered aircraft propeller, advancing early aviation with innovation rarely acknowledged. Before rockets and jets, there was Adams, a Black inventor, helping humanity take flight. From your mailbox to your microwave, from your golf swing to your cataract surgery, Black hands were there first. Not 1, not 5, not 10, but 100 earth-shifting, life-saving, world-changing inventions by Black creators. And these first 20? Just the beginning. So ask yourself, why weren't you taught this in school? Why are their names missing from history books? Who benefits from our ignorance? It's time to reclaim our narrative, to lift the veil, to break the silence. These inventors weren't anomalies. They were prophets of innovation, soldiers of survival, and saints of ingenuity. Their legacy flows through every faucet, spins through every washing machine, and lights every street corner. Don't let this truth die in the algorithm. Like this video to honor their names. Subscribe so you don't miss part 2, because we're just getting started. Share this with your children, your church, your barbershop, your school. Comment with an invention or inventor you never knew was Black. Let the world know, we didn't just survive, we invented survival. What if I told you that Adam was never the beginning? What if I told you that long before Eden, long before clay met breath, long before let there be light pierced the void, there were beings, watching, rejoicing, and falling. They were called the sons of God. But who were they? Why does the church avoid their name? And why, oh why does the Bible speak of them at the foundation of the earth when Adam hadn't yet been formed? So buckle up, saints, because what you're about to hear will challenge your faith, stir your spirit, and maybe even make you question the entire timeline of humanity. Let's go back to the beginning, before the beginning. In one of the most breathtaking passages of Scripture, God questions Job, saying, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" This isn't poetic flourish, this is revelation. A divine curtain is being pulled back, and for a brief moment we're given a glimpse into the prelude to Genesis. Before land met sea, before light pierced the darkness, before the breath of life filled Adam's lungs, there were already beings rejoicing in the presence of the Creator. The sons of God, mentioned not metaphorically but by title, shouted for joy as the foundations of the earth were set in place. Let that sink in. These celestial entities didn't appear midway through the story. They were there from the very beginning, not passive spectators but active witnesses, possibly even participants in a higher divine order. Their presence challenges the traditional timeline many of us grew up with, that Adam was the first conscious creation. But if the sons of God existed before him, then who were they? What was their purpose? And why has their story been so overlooked, so buried beneath centuries of theological dust? Could it be that the creation story we've been told is just one layer of a much deeper, older reality? Could these ancient beings, these sons of God, hold the key to a cosmic history that predates humanity? One thing is certain, the Bible does not hide them. We have simply stopped asking the right questions. But now, the time has come to remember what was forgotten, to rediscover the witnesses who stood at the dawn of everything. If the sons of God were present before Adam, then who or what were they? To answer this mystery, we must dig deep into scripture, tradition, and the echoes of ancient texts. Over the centuries, scholars, mystics, and theologians have proposed three main theories, each more radical than the last, and each one capable of reshaping our understanding of creation itself. The first and most widely accepted view is that the sons of God were angels, divine beings mentioned throughout Job, Genesis, Psalms, and most explicitly in the apocryphal Book of Enoch. These weren't the cherubic figures of Renaissance art. They were watchers, charged with observing mankind but forbidden to interfere. Yet some of them did the unthinkable. They descended to earth, seduced by the beauty of human women, and took them as wives. Genesis 6:2 tells us, "The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose." This wasn't a holy union. It was a rebellion. A crossing of spiritual and physical realms that birthed something monstrous. The Nephilim. Giants. Hybrids. Not quite angel, not quite man. Something else entirely. Their existence grieved God so deeply that he brought the flood, not just to cleanse humanity, but to purge the earth of their presence. The second theory takes us even deeper. Some believe the sons of God were not angels at all, but pre-existent souls, beings of light, created long before the physical universe. Jeremiah 1:5 reveals a cryptic truth. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." What if this wasn't poetic metaphor, but a whisper of a forgotten reality? That Adam wasn't the first creation, but the first to walk in flesh? This aligns with Jewish mystical thought, which speaks of divine sparks, souls, emerging from God before time. Could the fall in Eden have been a reenactment of a far older collapse, one in which the sons of God fell first? And finally, there is the gap theory. Genesis 1:2 states, "The earth was without form and void." But in Hebrew, was can also mean became. Could the earth have become formless after a previous creation was destroyed? According to this view, the sons of God may have been rulers of a primordial world, a celestial civilization that collapsed under the weight of pride and sin. In this light, Adam was not the first man, but the divine reset. The restart, created to fill the void left by fallen rulers, born not just to survive, but to redeem a shattered order. We've long been told that Lucifer's fall was a solitary act of defiance, one angel, filled with pride, cast down from heaven. But the scriptures suggest a much more staggering reality. In Revelation 12:4, it is written, "His tail swept a third of the stars from heaven." This is not poetic imagery. This is a cosmic coup, a rebellion of epic proportions. What if Lucifer wasn't acting alone, but leading a revolt that fractured the divine realm? Consider this: the sons of God, described throughout Scripture as powerful spiritual beings with access to the heavenly court, may not have been innocent bystanders. If they were part of the divine council, governing spirits, enforcers of celestial law, then some may have joined him in his ambition to ascend above the throne of the Most High. Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 unveil a chilling portrait of a magnificent cherub, brilliant, adorned, and wise, who was cast out of Eden because of pride. These descriptions are often linked to Lucifer, but could they also reflect a broader insurrection among the divine elite? Could the Watchers, those same sons of God who later defied divine boundaries by taking human wives, have been part of this earlier rebellion in the heavens? And here's the most unsettling thought. What if some of them never left? What if these rebellious spirits were not fully cast down, but scattered, operating in the shadows, pulling strings behind empires, cultures, and spiritual systems, hidden in plain sight, influencing the course of human history even to this day? This was not just a fall, it was a fracture, a war in heaven that spilled into the earth, and humanity, whether we realize it or not, has been caught in its wake ever since. Genesis 6 is the moment where the ancient mystery erupts into plain sight. A passage so provocative, it's been softened in pulpits, skipped over in Sunday schools, and buried beneath centuries of sanitized theology. Yet it reads with terrifying clarity. There were giants in the earth in those days, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. Genesis 6, verse 4. This was a divine line crossed, a forbidden union between heavenly beings and human women. The ancient book of Enoch, once revered and now marginalized, exposes the full weight of this transgression. It tells of 200 watchers, celestial beings, who descended upon Mount Hermon. Their mission was to observe, but they fell into desire. They made a pact. They would take human wives and bear offspring, no matter the consequence. But they brought more than lust. They brought knowledge, secrets meant for heaven alone. They taught humanity the art of war, sorcery, enchantment, and astrology. They unveiled the use of metals for weapons, roots for abortion, and cosmetics for seduction. They handed humanity divine tools without divine guidance. And the result? The Nephilim, colossal hybrids of angelic and human blood, giants who roamed the earth, devouring its people and its peace. Their very existence polluted the order of creation. This was not a gift of enlightenment, it was a cosmic contamination. A spiritual toxin injected into the bloodstream of humanity, a breach so profound that it forced God's hand. Genesis 6 is not just a story of giants. It is the record of a rebellion, one that defiled heaven's design and set the stage for divine judgment. And the echoes of that forbidden pact still reverberate in the shadows of our world today. The Great Flood has often been portrayed as a divine punishment for human wickedness, a moral reset, washing away corruption with 40 days of rain. But what if that's only part of the truth? What if the flood was more than a judgment on mankind? What if it was a cosmic sterilization, a divine cover-up designed to bury not just sinners, but the evidence of a celestial rebellion? Genesis 6:5-6 tells us, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and it repented the Lord that he had made man." But ask yourself, was God grieving mankind's evil or grieving what mankind had become? Humanity, once made in the image of God, was no longer purely human. The union between the sons of God and the daughters of men had birthed the Nephilim, giants, chimeras, corrupted beings not authorized by heaven. They were more than abominations. They were the tools of fallen gods, living proof of a breach that tainted the very order of creation. The Book of Enoch reveals that the Watchers who defied heaven were cast into Tartarus, a prison of darkness, locked away until the day of judgment. But their knowledge, the forbidden technologies, the hidden arts, the arcane sciences, they couldn't be unlearned. That knowledge survived. It passed through generations, hidden in mystery schools, whispered through bloodlines, encoded in symbols carved in stone. The flood may have drowned the Nephilim, but it couldn't drown the secrets. What began as rebellion turned it into legacy, a dark inheritance buried not just beneath the waters of the earth, but deep within human civilization. And if we dare to look closely, that ancient influence may still be shaping our world today. Long after the floodwaters receded and the giants fell silent, the influence of the fallen sons of God did not simply vanish. Their physical forms may have been imprisoned or destroyed, but their power, their influence, lived on. Daniel 10:13 unveils a chilling reality. A heavenly messenger is delayed for 21 days, resisted by a spiritual entity known as the Prince of Persia. This was no ordinary demon. This was a principality, an ancient power enthroned over nations. Paul echoes this cosmic conflict in Ephesians 6. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. These are ranks in a spiritual hierarchy, remnants of the divine rebellion, still waging war behind the veil. The fallen sons of God didn't disappear. They were enthroned. Over empires, over systems, over ideologies. They became the hidden hand behind history, the silent architects of war, greed, and deception. From Babylon to Rome, from pharaohs to presidents, their fingerprints are everywhere. They are the ones who whisper in the ears of kings, inspire false religions, and manipulate the masses from behind the curtain of power. Could it be that these celestial rebels never truly left us, but merely changed form? Could they now move through our politics, our economies, even our technologies? Could artificial intelligence, mass surveillance, and global control be modern instruments of an ancient war? The truth is, we already know the answer. The signs are all around us. The world we live in is not just corrupt, it's contested, a battlefield. And the sons of God may still be here, watching, influencing, waiting. The question is, are we awake enough to see them? Psalm 8:5 reveals a divine paradox. You made him a little lower than the angels and crowned him with glory and honor. At first glance, it seems like a mere poetic reflection on human dignity. But look deeper. It's a heavenly blueprint. In Genesis 1:28, God commands Adam to have dominion over the earth. This wasn't just about tending gardens or naming animals. This was a transfer of authority, a divine mandate to rule, to govern, to step into a role that had once belonged to another. You see, humanity wasn't an afterthought. We were the replacement, God's answer to rebellion. Where the sons of God failed, Adam was called to rise. Where divine beings corrupted their mission, humanity was chosen to restore order. This is why Paul boldly writes in 1 Corinthians 6:3, "Do you not know that we shall judge angels?" That's not symbolic, that's destiny. You were born by divine design, to sit in seats once occupied by celestial rulers, to restore justice where lawlessness reigned, to walk in dominion as sons and daughters of the Most High. The fall of the Watchers opened a vacancy, and God created you to fill it, with authority, with purpose, and with glory. This battle didn't begin in Eden. It began before Adam ever walked the earth. It began in the unseen realm, where celestial beings once stood in glory and later fell in rebellion. From the towering pyramids of ancient empires to the secret councils of modern elites, from the watchers of old to the hidden influencers of today, the fallen sons of God have not vanished. They have only gone deeper into the shadows. And their mission remains the same: to resist your inheritance, to block your dominion, to steal your identity. But here's the divine truth they never wanted you to uncover. You were born for this time. Not to be ruled, but to reign. Not to wander, but to govern. You were not made to survive the darkness, you were made to pierce it. Through Christ, the second Adam, the curse has been broken. He descended into death, snatched the keys from the enemy, and rose with all power in his hands. And now, he calls you to rise, to take your place in the divine council, to reclaim the authority that heaven once entrusted to the fallen. The veil has been torn, the mystery revealed. The truth is in your hands. The question now is not what the sons of God did, but what will you do with what's been revealed? Will you return to sleep, or rise as a true son of the kingdom, armed with the authority of heaven? Because the war may not have started with you, but child of God, it might end with you. So remember, the truth has always been there, but only those who seek will see it. Like this message, share it with a fellow warrior. Comment below. Do you believe the sons of God still walk among us? And don't forget to subscribe, because what comes next may shake the very heavens.